Melissa, that's probably the first step. There would be clearly the first step would be for the Melbourne Footy Club to get the appropriate people together, and that in itself can be a process. But then to decide what sort of coach they're looking for, and that's probably more a sense of urgency than me deciding, whether I actually want to still be involved at a senior coaching level, because if that did unfold, my first question would be, what sort of coach are you after? And if they're after a 35-year-old Melissa, that ain't going to fit. So. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it, but the thing, when you've been in football for a long period of time, the thing you really enjoy is you enjoy watching the assistant coaches, the joy they get out of it because of all the great work they do with the players. I mean, in terms of direct contact with the players, it's much more than I have. You get joy out of seeing smiling faces and the way the song was sung with such gusto, and the enjoyment and the excitement that it creates amongst the playing group. And I watched some Vision again this afternoon at the final siren. The excitement and the joy and the happiness that it brings, our supporter group that's been crying out, for a long period of time. So I guess when you sit in the chair, it's more about the joy, if you called it, the excitement, the absolute happiness that it brings, the emotion that it brings for other people.
Early in the year, you seemed to be, sort of flatly ruling out the prospect of coaching again. I remember we asked you that on that segment.
Yeah.
And then when you took over a couple of weeks ago, you said you want to use the rest of the year to gauge whether you were still interested. Are you more interested now than you were 2 weeks ago?
The answer to that, Rowan, would be I'm probably at a similar spot. When I did speak to you guys early in the year, I mean, I was pretty clear in my mind, and I was very clear when I left Adelaide, when I finished in Adelaide, that was sort of it for me as a senior coach. It would have to be some fairly rigid conditions for me, to be a senior coach again. I'm not saying that's impossible, but that's just the way I operate. And I don't necessarily want to put them in the public arena at the moment, and that's why it's absolutely important, going back to Melissa's question about the Melbourne Football Club. First and foremost, they've got to decide, what their next coach needs to look like and the skill set that he needs, because that might be poles apart, from what I've got, the skills I've got, or how I see the game, and so it's a pretty quick conversation, really, isn't it? So, that's the most important part first, to get that.
You understand, though, that in the media and public's mind, you seem to be, the better Melbourne perform, the more people will perceive you have a chance of taking on the job. It sort of reminds me a bit of when, ironically, Paul Roos took over Sydney in 2002, and the better they did, the more grew the pressure on them to appoint him, and by the end of the year, they were sort of almost forced into it. I mean, is it a possibility that we could see a similar situation?
I'd be disappointed. I'd be disappointed if Melbourne were forced into appointing anyone. You certainly wouldn't want that situation. I mean, I remember the Paul Roos situation, and gained a lot of momentum, didn't it? It was. Yeah, it was. But it was clearly that Paul wanted to do it as well, and Paul would have been and shown to be a great fit for the Sydney Football Club, and the culture that he was able to create and pass on. It's a huge credit to Paul. So I don't necessarily think, Rowan, that those same conditions exist here for that. I'm a 57-year-old. I'm not sure how old Paul was when he took over that job. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think the conditions are slightly different.